It's quiet now, the kind of quiet that sinks into your bones, not empty, but full of hard-won peace. My apartment, small as it is, feels like a sanctuary. The hum of the fridge, the distant city drone, they're just background noise to the steady rhythm of my own breath. I've got a mug of lukewarm coffee beside me, the Boston skyline a hazy blur outside my window, and for the first time in what feels like forever, I'm not bracing for impact. That's a new feeling. A stark, almost terrifying contrast to the year that nearly broke me. The year that was, without exaggeration, the worst of my life. Before that, my life had always been predictable, stable, boring, maybe to some. I made a solid $85,000 a year, enough to cover my rent on a cramped one-bedroom in Somerville, keep my beat-up 2010 Honda Civic running, and occasionally treat myself to a decent meal. I was Sam Everett, 36, a network security specialist. The kind of guy who built firewalls tighter than Fort Knox, who saw digital threats in his sleep. I lived for the logic, the patterns, the impenetrable architecture of a well-secured system. It was my passion, my calling, and I was good at it. Damn good. Then Evelyn walked in, and the firewalls of my own life began to crumble, one calculated, insidious piece at a time. We met at work, of course. She was my manager, a few years younger, with a brilliant smile and an ambition that sparkled like fresh ice. I was instantly drawn to her sharp mind, her drive. She saw something in me, too, I thought, a quiet competence, a dedication she claimed to admire. Our relationship started fast, a whirlwind of late-night office talks that bled into dinners, then weekend trips. She understood my world, or so I believed. She spoke my language, celebrated my wins, and listened intently when I'd ramble about the intricacies of a new threat vector. It felt perfect. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just as Sam the network guy, but as Sam, the man capable of deep connection. The red flags, when I looked back, were barely visible, like faint whispers in the background noise of a clean network trace. She'd make little comments, always cloaked in humor, about my developer chic, meaning my perpetually casual wardrobe, or my car, my trusty Civic, which she'd call a classic, with a wry smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd joke about my small apartment, suggesting we needed more space for her ever-growing collection of expensive bags. At the time, I brushed it off. I loved my simple life. I valued function over flash. But Evelyn, she wanted flash. She wanted luxury. She dreamed aloud of penthouses and European vacations, of rubbing shoulders with people who mattered. And subtly, relentlessly, she began to imply that my quiet ambition wasn't quite enough to get us there. I remember this one dinner party, early on, at the home of one of her university friends, some venture capitalist type with a loft apartment that probably cost more than my entire life savings. Evelyn, radiant in a dress I knew cost more than a month of my rent, introduced me as Sam, my brilliant cybersecurity expert. But then, she'd pivot. He's practically a digital monk, lives for his code. Doesn't care for the finer things in life, do you, Sam? She'd laugh, a light, tinkling sound, and the VCs would chuckle along, their eyes lingering on my slightly too casual blazer. I'd force a smile, a knot tightening in my stomach. It wasn't just a joke. It was a subtle belittling, a constant recalibration of my worth in front of her high-status crowd. I started to feel like an accessory, a useful but slightly embarrassing detail in her carefully curated narrative. The pressure mounted. She wanted a bigger place, a downtown high-rise with a view. Our vacations morphed from cozy cabins in Vermont to boutique hotels in Paris, funded almost entirely by me, or rather, by a growing line of credit I'd opened. I tried to explain my concerns, the stability I valued, the careful budgeting. She'd accuse me of being stuck in the past, of holding us back. There was always an underlying current that if I just tried harder, if I just wanted more, we could have it all. And because I loved her, because I was so desperate to believe she loved me, I tried. I really did. I put in extra hours, took on more projects, all while the company's network security, my baby, remained my primary focus. It was around this time that she began to talk about efficiency audits. She was my manager, after all, and our company was a critical infrastructure provider, a juicy target for any rival or for internal corporate maneuvering. She explained that with the company growing so rapidly, she needed elevated network access for a comprehensive internal review to identify bottlenecks, optimize data flow, ensure compliance. It sounded legitimate. Hell, it sounded proactive. And it came from Evelyn, the woman I trusted with everything. My expertise was in building defenses, not questioning the motives of those I loved. So, I granted her the access. She knew the systems, knew my routines, knew exactly where the soft spots would be if someone were looking for them. She'd often work late, telling me she was deep in her audits, and I, the trusting fool, would bring her coffee and admire her dedication. But then things started to go sideways. Not a full-blown breach, not yet, but glitches, anomalies, small, almost imperceptible shifts in network behavior that made my teeth ache. I'd chase shadows for days, digging deep into logs, thinking I was losing my edge. I'd bring it up to Evelyn, express my concern that something was off, that our defenses felt porous. She'd dismiss it. Sam, you're the best. Maybe you're just getting a little paranoid with all the stress. Or, it's probably just a new software integration settling in. You're overthinking it. Gaslighting. I know the word now. Back then, it was a slow, insidious poison. She'd make me second-guess every instinct, every warning bell that screamed in my gut. My mind, usually a fortress of logic, became a foggy, uncertain place. I started to doubt my own skills, my own sanity. I'd stay up all night, staring at monitors, convinced I was missing something obvious, something vital. The company's security posture, once my pride, became a source of constant anxiety. The peak of her manipulation was a masterpiece of cruelty. The whispers of a hostile takeover started circulating, then grew louder. Our rival, a behemoth in the industry, was making aggressive moves. Evelyn, my manager, was suddenly in even more high-level meetings, looking increasingly stressed. She told me the company was vulnerable, that our leadership was failing, and that we needed to be proactive. She started pushing for more access points for her audits, claiming it was urgent, critical for identifying our systemic weaknesses before the takeover happened. She made it sound like she was fighting for us, for our future. I remember her coming home one night, her face pale, claiming she'd just heard a rumor that our CEO was looking for a scapegoat, someone to blame if the company was acquired. She hugged me tight, tears in her eyes. Sam, you're the most dedicated person I know. But sometimes, they want to pin things on the tech guys, you know? Just be careful. Make sure everything is absolutely airtight. The irony, the sheer, gut-wrenching irony of her saying that, knowing what she was doing. She was laying the groundwork, building a narrative where I was the fall guy. And I, like the naive, love-struck idiot I was, believed her. I believed she was worried about me. Then came the security lapse. It wasn't a breach in the traditional sense, not a hacker incursion. It was a systemic weakening, a series of subtle backdoors and vulnerabilities that, collectively, made our company ripe for the picking. When the rival corporation finally launched its aggressive acquisition, citing grave security concerns and a lack of robust defenses, it felt like a punch to the gut. The company was acquired, swallowed whole. And just like Evelyn had predicted, I was immediately targeted. I was called into a sterile conference room, my own carefully built systems laid bare as evidence of my failures. They showed me reports, logs, access points that had been used, all of them pointing to my elevated credentials. My own access, my own work. Evelyn sat in on the meeting, her face a mask of disappointment. I'm so sorry, Sam, she whispered to me afterward, her hand briefly on my arm. I truly believed in your work. Within weeks, I was out. Fired. My name tarnished. My career, my reputation, my entire sense of self, utterly destroyed. And Evelyn, she was quickly promoted, lauded as a hero for navigating the complex transition and for her invaluable insights into the previous company's vulnerabilities. She was given a senior management role in the new, larger corporation, now reporting directly to the executives who had just laid me off. She thrived. I crumpled. The next few weeks were a blur of cheap whiskey and self-pity. My apartment, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. The silence was deafening. I stopped answering calls, let the bills pile up. I was a husk. My mind, which had once solved impossible puzzles, could only replay the moments of betrayal, each one a fresh stab. How could I have been so blind? So stupid. The signs were there. The subtle put-downs, the financial drain, the constant need for validation through external status symbols. It was all so clear in hindsight. But something shifted. It wasn't a sudden burst of clarity, more like a slow, agonizing crawl out of the abyss. One night, staring at the ceiling, I remembered Evelyn's code. Her style. When we worked together, she had this quirk, this unorthodox way of commenting her scripts, a particular indentation pattern, a verbose, almost poetic approach to naming variables that was uniquely her. It wasn't standard practice, and I'd teased her about it once. She'd laughed it off, said it helped her keep track. A flicker ignited in the darkness. What if those backdoors weren't just generic exploits? What if they carried her signature? My mind, for the first time in months, latched onto a problem it could solve. A problem that felt real, tangible, something I could fight. The victim within me started to shrink, replaced by a cold, calculating professional. I still had my old company laptop, technically my personal property since I'd bought it and used it for some freelance work. It had old logs, archived network traces, a full snapshot of our system before the takeover. I fired it up, the screen's glow illuminating my determined face in the darkroom. I began to dig, not for vulnerabilities, but for Evelyn. Hours blurred into days, fueled by stale coffee and a burning, righteous fury. I accessed my old VPN through a back channel I'd set up years ago for emergency remote access, a testament to my foresight, now turned into a weapon. I navigated the remnants of the compromised network, meticulously sifting through terabytes of data. I looked at the timestamps, the access patterns, the specific mechanisms of the back doors that had been planted. And there it was. Not obvious, not to anyone without my intimate knowledge of her particular digital handwriting. But it was there. That specific variable naming convention. That unusual commenting style. A ghost in the machine, screaming Evelyn's name. It hit me like a physical blow. The betrayal was so complete, so utterly vile. She hadn't just used me. She had actively, methodically, used my trust, my skills, my own access to destroy the very thing I held dear, and then framed me for it. My stomach churned, and I felt a wave of nausea. I stumbled to the bathroom, vomiting until my throat was raw. I collapsed on the cold tile floor, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just my career, it was me. She had taken Sam Everett and tried to turn him into nothing. But as the immediate emotional storm passed, a new clarity settled in. This wasn't just about clearing my name. This was about vengeance. A deep, primal need to expose her, to make her pay for every single calculated lie, every smirk, every casual dismissal of my worth. I wasn't going to yell, or scream, or confront her. That was her game. My game was silence, precision, and overwhelming, undeniable proof. Nuclear revenge. I knew Evelyn. I knew her new company. I knew their systems, their weaknesses, their blind spots. And I remembered an obscure, unpatched vulnerability in a deprecated legacy system that our old company still had partially connected to the newly acquired infrastructure. It was a backdoor of sorts, a remnant from an older era that no one thought to patch because it was rarely used and theoretically isolated. But it wasn't completely isolated. And it was just enough. My plan began to form, cold and elegant in its simplicity. I wouldn't cause a breach. I wouldn't damage the network. I would simply make her own planted vulnerabilities scream. I'd write a ghost script, a piece of code so subtle it would bypass her detection, but powerful enough to subtly amplify the unique noise of her backdoors. It would make them broadcast their presence, not to the world, but to a very specific, internal, high-level threat detection system that she couldn't turn off. A system designed for internal compliance and executive oversight, immune to her manipulations. It would make her work, her sabotage, visible from the inside, right before a major compliance review the new company was scheduled to undergo. They'd be looking for exactly what she had left, and they'd find it, courtesy of her own access credentials. The next few weeks were a relentless marathon. I lived in a haze of code, caffeine, and a quiet, simmering rage. Every line of my ghost script was meticulously crafted, every potential countermeasure considered. I exploited the obscure vulnerability, creating a perfect, untraceable conduit. I crafted the amplification sequence, a digital flare that would pinpoint her precise coding signature without giving away my presence. My fingers flew across the keyboard, a furious dance of retribution. My intellect, which she had mocked and exploited, was now her undoing. The day of the compliance review arrived. I tracked it on public news feeds, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread. My script had been set to execute precisely 24 hours before the internal audit began. I pictured it, the auditors, sharp-eyed and thorough, running their diagnostic suites. And then, the alarms. Not a crash, not a meltdown, but a slow, undeniable unfolding of a systemic internal compromise, bearing Evelyn's digital fingerprint. The news broke 2 days later, not with a bang, but with a series of rapidly escalating headlines. Major corporate espionage scandal rocks, new company name. High-level manager arrested for industrial sabotage. Her picture, smiling and confident, was plastered across every business publication, now beneath damning accusations. Evelyn Reed, corporate saboteur, industrial spy. She was arrested, her career utterly destroyed, her new company embroiled in a scandal so severe it would take years to recover. The very system she sought to profit from, the one she helped acquire through my destruction, had become her unmaking. The irony was exquisite. My name wasn't immediately cleared, not publicly, but the charges against me evaporated. The internal investigation, powered by the evidence my script had revealed, showed I was a scapegoat, a victim, and the word started to spread in the cybersecurity community. The guy who built the firewall that was breached turned out to be the victim of one of the most sophisticated internal corporate espionage schemes in recent memory. My phone, which had been silent for months, started to ring. It wasn't a hero's welcome. The shame still lingered, the scars of betrayal were deep. But there was a quiet triumph. My integrity was restored. The government came calling, an agency needing exactly my kind of defensive insights, my unique ability to think like a black hat while building like a white hat. It was a perfect fit. Meaningful work, a place where my skills were truly valued, where trust was paramount. My new apartment has a view of the harbor, a little bigger, a little brighter. My Civic is still my ride, a familiar, comforting constant. The quiet is different now. It's not the tense silence of waiting for the next blow, but the expansive silence of space, of freedom. And then there's Sarah. She's a research scientist, brilliant in her own right, but grounded, kind. She laughs at my tech jokes, not with a dismissive glint, but with genuine amusement. She doesn't care about my salary, or my car, or the size of my apartment. She cares about the way my eyes light up when I talk about a complex algorithm, about the quiet strength she sees in me, about my character. She knows parts of my story, enough to understand the scars I carry. She doesn't pity me, she just listens and holds my hand. Healing isn't linear, and trust is a fragile thing. But with Sarah, I'm learning to build it again, brick by honest brick. The firewalls in my life are stronger now. Not just the digital ones, but the ones around my heart. I still feel the ghost of that brutal year sometimes, a phantom ache. But I faced the darkness, I found my way out, and I emerged, not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free.